Welcome back to the channel. Fawn Braun here. We're gonna go over the lathe now. Part 2 of the lathe homecoming series. Part 1 you guys saw was the tooling side of everything, at least what I brought it home with. This is part 2. It's gonna go over the lathe. It's gonna be in a couple of sections. First, I'm just gonna go over the lathe from the headstock to the tailstock, just kind of what was on it, what it came with, that sort of thing. Part 2 is I'm gonna go over all of the nonsense that was on the lathe that I'll make videos about what I'm going to do to fix the problems and the little stupid things that the previous owner did to it. So let's go ahead and start the video here. Just say that you guys saw the desk that we went through that had the drawers with all of the tooling in it. It did not come with the Takasago Excel rims. Those are all mine for later projects and lacings of things. But the desk itself does have a nice maple top. It's a big, thick, like 1.5-inch maple top that it's mounted to. So it's not like a particle board. It's solid maple. So that's good. So starting over here at the headstock, it does have your typical, V belt back here on the backside. Your 2 pulleys. Your small one on the motor, your bigger one up on top. It's got your forward and reverse switch on here for the motor, which is nice. It's mounted up high. It's not mounted down low by your knees or anything where you could possibly hit it. I like the fact that it's mounted up here nice and high. Opening it up here, it's got your lockup inside of there. This piece is cast iron. It's really heavy. If you guys have a South Bend lathe or one of these Logan lathes, these things are incredibly heavy. I know the South Bend ones kind of tip up too. I don't know about the Atlas ones. I haven't messed with an Atlas lathe before, but these things are heavy. That being said, the belt has been changed over to an automotive style serpentine belt. Doesn't have a leather belt in it anymore, which was a nice feature the previous owner did. Does have an Atlas half horsepower single phase motor down there, which I'll get to in a minute about that motor. I'll undo this here. Sorry about the shaky cam. So that's nice. Oh, also on the Logan lathes, Logan series lathes, this nut, just jam nut and pin back here or you should say go to a pin way back here. What that pin does is it pushes down on this rear spindle assembly and actually tightens up the belt when this cover is closed, which I myself personally like. If the cover is up like this and it's locked in by your lock rod here, the belt is actually slack. As soon as you undo your lock rod and you lower this down, it will actually push that rear spindle assembly back. It will tighten up the motor to pulley belt, and it will tighten up your back spindle to front spindle belt. So it tensions everything up, which is really nice. It's a feature that I'm a big fan of there. Let me lower this back down. Moving over here is your typical headstock gears. This does have the quick change gearbox on it, so I don't have to worry about all these change gears that come up inside of here. Now, the Logan owners or any of the lathe owners, I should say, notice that there's a cover missing right here. The cover I do have, it is actually down here. Main reason that it is down there is it has this attached piece on the pulley. I will be taking this off on a future video. Whoever had this before me or before him or whatever down the line made this lock nut. I don't know what it is. It's threaded here. To me, it's garbage. It has to go. With 3 kids running around, I can't have this thing open, and I can't put this cover on because when you put it on the hinge here with the hinge pin, it won't close over because this piece sticks out. So I'll make another video of how I remove this piece, and I'll show you the spindle lock nut, which I actually found in one of the drawers. I will take that spindle lock nut and I'll actually put it back on here properly, and I will put the cover back on here. So that being said, like I said, it does come with the quick change gearbox, model 815. The 815 was the bench model. The 820 is the legged model that I found is kind of the biggest difference between the two of them. Other than that, they're basically the exact same. All of the quick change levers and knobs, they all work fine. I've already messed with that. The bull gear I'm sorry, the back gear, not the bowl gear. The bowl gear is here. I apologize. The back gear is actually down below on the Logan models. It resides underneath the spindle assembly. It doesn't go in back like the Atlas or the South Bends, that sort of thing. It's actually down below. And you notice here, this is where the rod and knob is supposed to go for the back gear assembly. The back gear is on eccentric, so when you pull out the rod assembly, it actually rotates the back gear assembly up and locks it into the spindle. Now I have the rod right here. Here's the rod assembly with the rack. Rack is attached to it, the rod. The reason I do not have it in here, I'm going to be making a video, the paw that goes inside of here and the little spring that pushes the paw down is missing. What that does is when you pull this out, that little paw assembly kicks down and actually locks itself below the hole to keep the eccentric engaged. Right now, if you pull this out and the eccentric comes up, the back gear comes up and locks itself to the spindle, and you rotate the spindle, all it does is it sucks this rod back in and it drops the back gear back down. So I can't use back gear right now because this tang is missing. I did push the pin out, so I'm good there. So I'll be making a tang and I'll be finding a spring to put down in that hole to push the tang back out. So that's another problem that it has that I got to address, but I do have it, so I'm not worried about it. Moving on, it did come with the micrometer style carriage stop, which is nice. If you watched part 1, you saw this briefly. There is another 4-part carriage stop or 4 adjustable carriage stop that was homemade that's coming with it, but I'm going to be using this one. It just has the adjustable mic measurements on it. It'll work for now until I get an actual dial gauge style one. Here's a 3-jaw chuck that it came with. The 3-jaw chuck is a Cushman company, made in USA, with the jaws in there. That's another project I'm going to be working on right now. I mic'd this out. I mic'd about 5 thousandths out of round, which is unacceptable. I got to get that down to at least 2, and I'm going to see if maybe it was these homemade jaws that are on here. I know it's not the spindle because I mic'd the spindle here and I mic'd the spindle here and it's dead zero, so I know that my spindle assembly is good. So it's something with these jaws, and we'll look into that in another video, but for right now it works just fine. Speaking of chucks, this is a Rockwell 4-jaw chuck that it also came with. I know I didn't show it in the other video, but it's a Rockwell down there. It's a 25873. You gotta read that upside down there, guys. 4-jaw chuck, actually in really good shape. Looks like it's probably either never been used or it was used very lightly, so that's a nice little addition. Moving over here to the whole saddle assembly, you got your apron here. It does have your power cross feeds, both for your apron feed or your lead screw feed, if you will, and your cross feed here. So lateral and longitudinal, which is nice. Now, an issue, not something an issue, something that this guy had added onto this is this plate here. It almost looks like a taper attachment plate, but it doesn't have any of the taper attachment pieces. But I know it's not a taper attachment plate, so don't harp on me for that. It's what it looks like. But I asked the guy about it when I picked it up, and he said he was just putting his dial gauges on it using it as a steel plate. So that's basically what I'm gonna probably be doing to it too. Now, if you notice, he also has a T-slot on the back side of the compound here. Your typical compound usually would have a cover that just comes down right here just to protect it from all the chips and everything, but he has this T-slot that's in there. Now that T-slot is for this giant hunk of metal here that also looks like a homemade piece. As you guys can see, it's got a homemade T-nut on it with the slots and everything, but it's got a Armstrong cutoff tool holder and cutoff tool in it, which is kind of funky. It's mounted upside down because obviously it's on the back side, so it's going to cut on the upswing as opposed to cutting on the downswing. But we'll kind of play with that and see how that works out. Something interesting, so we'll mess with that. Enco style turret tool holder. It can rotate to different tools. If you have multiple tools, I do have one in here, but you can set a couple of them up in here, which is nice. It's not a quick change tool post, but it'll work for the time being. It's definitely not a lantern, so that's an upgrade. So your compound, which is good. Gibs are nice and tight. I did adjust those and clean that. You know, your typical cross feed works as it should. Whole saddle assembly, nice and smooth. Nothing too crazy there. This is not a stock Logan knob for the clutch, but I do like this better than the Logan stock clutch knob, so we'll be running with that because I like it. Thread dial, it's on there, which is nice. You know, you're threading your lead screw there, knob. It does have your standard carriage lock bolt. It's not an aftermarket one, which is cool. Not that it makes a huge difference, but I like stock parts. If it's stock and it's there, I like it. Tail stock assembly with your original tail stock wrench, you know, to loosen and tighten that bolt. Again, I like that because it's the original piece. It does have a Morris 2 dead stop, or I'm sorry, a dead center, not dead stop, dead center on here. Slide that back, comes out in decent shape. Doesn't look like it's been used too much. Nice and clean. Stick that back in there. Your quill lock, which is nice. Something else that it came with that I thought was pretty cool, that I just now lost. Ha! There we go. We don't want to lose this piece. This is your original oil dauber. I don't know why they call them oil dauber. It used to carry white lead in here, but white lead started killing people, so they couldn't do that anymore. But you can put oil down there in a little reservoir and be for your live or dead center. Probably more or less for your dead center. Your live centers usually have ball bearings in them, but you can take, you know, a little bit of oil, you know, dab it on your dead center. You can put it back in there. So that's cool. Those usually end up missing, so it's nice that I have that. You know, your tail stock quill works as it should. Everything's nice and clean. Overall, it's a really clean lathe. Another, you know, Craigslist find. I'm very happy with what I found, how much I paid for it. It's an amazing lathe. You know, chip pan. It's really super quiet. Let me unlock this thing again here. As you can see, very quiet. You can barely even hear the thing run. I do have the Ford lead screw section going on it here. You know, it's got the neutral forward reverse, so I have it going so you can see the lead screw is spinning there for you. And I do have, oh, I got the, I have the half nut engaged. There you go. I was like, why is that spinning? So your threading nut, it'll start to go. Carriage moving. And the threading stops. So the nice thing I like about this lathe here and some of the South Bend lathes over like the Atlas lathes is you have a threading knob to do your threading on, but you also have a clutch knob and a power cross feeds selector, so you don't have to do your power cross feeding and your threading off of the half nuts like you do on the Atlas. On the Logans or the South Bends, you can thread with your threading lever and your half nuts, or you can disengage it and you can actually use and switch your crossfeed selectors and use your clutch. So this will actually tighten it up. You can see that it's moving. So that'll actually run the crossfeed. And then if you want it to stop, you just undo the clutch and it stops. It doesn't move. You can turn it back on. And you see that it starts moving again. So that's cool. So, you know, you put it back in its neutral position, which it normally resides, or you can come down. And so it's really kind of a pain in the neck with one hand, but you can come down the bottom here. It'll actually run your compound. You can see there, power feed on your compound. So it all works. Like I said, it's incredibly quiet. You can barely hear it. Really think I scored there. So you'll be seeing a lot of projects and things going on with this lathe. Like I said, a couple things I need to take care of. I got to fix that spindle and put the cover stuff back on. We're gonna have a video about cleaning that 3-jaw chuck and trying to true it up a little better than 5,000s, because to me that's unacceptable. And overall, just stay tuned for some other projects. So I hope you guys enjoyed. We have more stuff coming up, and Von Braun as usual saying take care, and we'll see you on the next videos. Adios.